Welcome to She's Evolving. I'm Elena, an endocrinologist who has spent the last 3 decades studying the intricate dance of hormones and how they shape our lives. But more than that, I'm a woman who has navigated the same choppy waters we're going to talk about today. Today's episode is incredibly close to my heart. We are talking to the woman who has spent years, maybe decades, putting everyone else's needs before her own. The woman who has been the rock, the glue, the caretaker, and the silent engine of her family or career, only to wake up one day and realize she doesn't quite recognize the person looking back at her in the mirror. And I'm Julia, a clinical psychologist. My work is centered on helping women rediscover their voices after they've been muffled by the demands of life, motherhood, and societal expectations. If you've ever looked at your reflection and asked, "Who is this woman? Where did the girl with the big dreams go?" then this conversation is for you. This isn't just a podcast episode, it's a permission slip. It's an invitation to stop running for a moment, take a deep breath, and realize that your evolution doesn't end just because you've spent a long time serving others. In fact, the most beautiful part of your story might just be beginning right now. We want to start by acknowledging you. If you are listening to this while driving your kids to practice, or while preparing a meal for a family that sometimes forgets to say thank you, or perhaps in the quiet of a house that finally feels too empty, we see you. We know the weight of the invisible load you've been carrying. Before we dive into the heart of today's topic, we'd love for you to join our community. Hit that follow button, and if this episode resonates with you, please share it with a friend. We're all in this together.
You know, Elena, I was sitting with a client last week. Let's call her Sarah. She's 54, her youngest just left for university, and she's had a stellar career. She sat on my sofa, and within 5 minutes, she just started weeping. Not because something bad had happened, but because she realized she had no idea what she liked to eat for breakfast when she wasn't making what everyone else wanted. She had become a master of everyone else and a stranger to herself. It's a physical manifestation too, Julia. I see it in my clinic every single day. Women come in complaining of brain fog or extreme fatigue, thinking it's just their thyroid or menopause, and often those things are playing a role. But when we dig deeper, we find a soul that is simply exhausted from being on for 30 years. I remember my own mirror moment. I was 51, I had just finished a 12-hour shift, and I went to brush my teeth. I looked at my hands. They looked like my mother's hands. And I realized I had spent my entire 40s caring for my patients and my aging parents, and I hadn't taken a real vacation or even read a book for pleasure in 5 years. I felt like a vessel that had been poured out until it was bone dry. That's such a powerful image, Elena, the vessel poured dry. We are taught, almost from birth, that a woman's value is tied to her utility. How good of a mother are you? How supportive of a wife? How reliable of an employee? We become so good at fulfilling these roles that we actually lose the ability to feel our own desires. It's what I call the selfless trap. We think being selfless is the ultimate virtue, but if you have no self left, what are you actually giving? You're just giving from a place of depletion and eventually resentment.
And the biology of that resentment is fascinating. When we live in a state of constant giving and high stress, our cortisol levels are permanently elevated. This isn't just a feeling, it's a chemical state. High cortisol over long periods leads to weight gain around the midsection, sleep disturbances, and a total crash in libido and joy. Our bodies are literally signaling to us, "Stop, I can't sustain this anymore." When women hit their late 40s and early 50s and the estrogen begins to drop, that nurturing hormone that kept us focused on others starts to fade. It's almost like a veil is lifted. Suddenly, the things we tolerated for years, the crumbs of attention, the lack of help around the house, become intolerable. Exactly. It's what many call the rage of the midlife woman, but I prefer to see it as a clarity. It's your psyche saying, "It's my turn now." But that transition is terrifying. There's so much guilt involved. I hear it all the time. Is it selfish for me to want to go away for a weekend alone? Or am I a bad mother because I'm relieved my kids are gone? We have to deconstruct that guilt. Guilt is often just the feeling of breaking a social contract that was never fair to begin with.
Let's talk about that social contract. For many of our listeners, they belong to the sandwich generation. They are still parenting, sometimes adult children who are struggling, and simultaneously caring for elderly parents whose health is failing. They are the emotional pivot point for everyone. Scientifically, this is a recipe for burnout. The drop in estrogen during perimenopause makes us less buffered against stress. We feel everything more acutely. Our skin gets thinner, and in a way, our emotional skin gets thinner too. And that's actually a gift, even if it feels like a crisis. When your emotional skin gets thinner, you can no longer ignore the truth. You start to realize that giving everything hasn't actually made the people around you happier or more independent. It's just made you disappear. I often ask my patients, if your daughter was in your shoes 20 years from now, what would you tell her? They always say, I'd tell her to take care of herself, to follow her dreams, to not let her light go out. And then the realization hits. They aren't modeling that for their daughters. They are modeling martyrdom. That's a heavy realization, modeling martyrdom. It's so true. We think we're being good by sacrificing everything, but we're actually teaching the next generation that a woman's life is a series of subtractions. But let's look at the science of the reemergence. When we start to prioritize our own health, getting the right hormone balance, prioritizing protein, lifting weights to keep our bones strong, something happens in the brain. We start to produce more dopamine. We start to seek out new experiences again. This is the biological foundation of reinvention. I love that, the biology of reinvention. On the psychological side, this is the time to ask the dangerous questions. If I wasn't the mom, or the boss, or the wife, who would I be today? This isn't about going back to who you were at 20. You can't go back, and frankly, you know too much now to be that girl again. This is about who you are now, with all your wisdom, your scars, and your hard-earned perspective. It's about finding the new you. Transition music, a light, uplifting piano melody.
We get so many questions from women who feel like they've missed the boat. One common question is, Elena, I'm 55. I've spent 25 years focused on my family. Is it too late to change my career or even my body? My answer is a resounding no. In fact, from a longevity standpoint, your 50s are the most critical decade to start. Your body is more responsive than you think. When you start nourishing yourself, not dieting, but nourishing, your energy levels can skyrocket. I've seen women start marathons at 60. I've seen women start businesses at 65. The biological decline is a myth. It's often just biological neglect that can be reversed.
And emotionally, people ask me, how do I handle the pushback? Because here's the truth. When you stop being the person who does everything for everyone, the people who benefited from your selflessness might get upset. They might call you difficult or changed. And I tell my clients, that's a sign it's working. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They are gates to keep your soul in. If someone is upset that you are finally taking care of yourself, they were likely enjoying a version of you that was unsustainable. Another big one is libido and intimacy. Julia, I feel like I've lost that part of myself. Is it just gone? This is where the physical and emotional meet. Yes, hormones play a role, and we can address those with HRT or lifestyle changes, but often the lack of desire is actually a lack of space. If you are mentally tracking the grocery list, your mother's doctor's appointment, and the laundry while you're in the bedroom, of course you're not in the mood. You're in manager mode. You have to fire the manager to let the lover back in. Fire the manager. I'm stealing that. It's so true. We carry the mental load into our most intimate moments. Part of finding yourself again is learning how to put the load down. It starts with small things. Taking 30 minutes a day where you are unavailable. No phone, no, Mom, where are my socks? No, can you just quickly check this email? Just you. Whether it's walking, sitting in the sun, or staring at a wall, you have to get used to the sound of your own thoughts again. I remember a patient who told me she felt guilty for taking a pottery class. She said, "It's 3 hours on a Saturday when I could be doing chores." I looked her in the eyes and said, "Those 3 hours are an investment in your sanity. A sane, happy woman is a much better mother and partner than a resentful, productive one." We have to stop measuring our worth by our productivity. You are not a human doing, you are a human being.
Let's talk about the invisibility factor. Many women over 45 feel like they become invisible to society. The male gaze moves on to younger women, and the workplace often overlooks the veteran for the innovative newcomer. But there is a secret power in invisibility. When you realize you no longer have to perform for the world's approval, you are finally free to live for your own. This is the crone stage of life, in the best sense of the word. The wise woman. The one who knows who she is and doesn't need a standing ovation to feel valid. It's a liberation. I find that my patients in their 50s and 60s are some of the most adventurous people I know. They are traveling, they are learning new languages, they are finally saying no to social obligations that drain them. And physically, they often look better than they did in their 40s because the stress has finally started to lift. Their skin glows because they are finally sleeping. Their posture changes because they aren't carrying the world on their shoulders anymore.
So if you're listening to this and you feel that tug in your chest, that little voice that says, "What about me?" Listen to it. That's not selfishness. That's your soul knocking on the door. It's time to answer. You've given so much to the world. You've raised the children, you've built the homes, you've supported the dreams of others. Now, it's time to gather all that love and energy you've been scattering like seeds and plant some of it back into your own garden. We want to leave you with a challenge this week. We want you to do one thing, just one, that is purely for you. Not for your health because you should, not for your family, not for your job. Something that makes you feel like you. Maybe it's buying that book you've wanted to read. Maybe it's taking a long bath with the door locked. Or maybe it's just sitting in a cafe for an hour alone with a cup of coffee. Observe how it feels. Observe the guilt that arises. And then let that guilt pass like a cloud. It doesn't belong to you. You are evolving. You aren't past your prime. You are entering a new kind of prime, one that is defined by depth, by authenticity, and by a fierce commitment to your own well-being. We are so honored to be on this journey with you. Remember, the world doesn't need more tired, selfless women. The world needs women who are alive, awake, and in love with their own lives. Thank you for joining us on She's Evolving. If this conversation touched you, please subscribe and share it. We want this message to reach every woman who feels lost in the shuffle of her own life. You are not alone, and it is never too late to come home to yourself. Until next time, take a deep breath, look in the mirror, and say hello to the woman you're becoming. She's been waiting for you.
You know, Julia, when we talk about this giving everything to others, we aren't just talking about a noble character trait. As a doctor, I see the physiological footprint of that self-sacrifice every single day. When a woman spends 20 or 30 years in a state of constant high alert, worrying about the kids' schedules, managing her partner's emotional needs, or being the primary caregiver for aging parents, her body pays a very specific price. We often call it stress, but scientifically, we are looking at a prolonged elevation of cortisol. And as we hit our late 40s and early 50s, our hormonal buffer, that wonderful estrogen that used to help us manage stress, starts to decline. Suddenly, the body says, I can't carry this load for everyone else anymore. That's often when the crash happens. And it's not a sign of weakness, it's a biological demand for a pivot.
That is such a crucial point, Elena. It's almost as if the body is staging a coup to save the soul. In my practice, I see women who arrive at 50 feeling like a hollowed-out shell. They've been the glue of the family for so long that they've forgotten what they actually taste like as an individual. They ask me, Julia, why am I so angry all of a sudden? Why am I so resentful? And I tell them, that resentment is actually a messenger. It's your inner self knocking on the door, saying, hey, remember me. I'm still in here, and I'm starving for attention. We've been conditioned to believe that good women are bottomless wells of service, but a well that isn't replenished eventually runs dry, and the stones at the bottom start to crack.
Exactly. And those cracks manifest as insomnia, weight gain around the midsection that doesn't respond to diet, or that brain fog that makes you feel like you're losing your mind. I often have patients who come in thinking they have early onset dementia, but when we dig deeper, they are just profoundly depleted from decades of other focused living. We have to reframe this period of life. It's not just about managing symptoms, It's about a fundamental shift in the hierarchy of care. For the first time in a long time, the woman herself must move to the top of the list, not as an act of vanity, but as a clinical necessity for longevity.
It's a total identity reconstruction. And that brings us to a very important part of our conversation today, the myths we've been told about this stage of life. I think we should dive into some of the things our listeners have been asking us, because there is so much misinformation out there that keeps women trapped in that cycle of self-neglect.
I agree. Let's look at some of these myths. One of the biggest ones I hear in my office is, it's too late to change my body or my health habits now. The damage is done. Women feel that because they haven't exercised in years or have eaten on the fly while feeding everyone else, their metabolism is broken forever. And from my side, the psychological version of that is, I'm too old to find a new passion or change my personality. This is just who I am now. The grandmother, the retired professional, the support system. There's this heavy sense of the end rather than the middle.
But the science says the opposite. The female body is incredibly resilient. Even in our 50s and 60s, our neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, is still very much alive. When we start prioritizing protein, strength training, and proper sleep, the body responds. It's like a plant that hasn't been watered in a week. It looks wilted, but the roots are still there. Once you give it what it needs, it perks up. It's never about reclaiming the body of a 20-year-old. It's about optimizing the powerful, wise body you have now.
And that wisdom is your greatest asset. One question we got recently was from a listener named Sarah. She said, I've spent 25 years being mom and wife. Now that the kids are gone, I feel invisible. How do I start finding myself without feeling like I'm betraying my family? This word betrayal is so heavy, isn't it?
It's heartbreaking. We've equated motherhood and womanhood with disappearance.
Precisely. Sarah, if you're listening, the betrayal isn't you finding yourself. The betrayal was the culture telling you that you had to lose yourself in the first place. Re-encountering yourself often starts with very small no's. No, I won't host the entire extended family this weekend because I need a day of silence. No, I won't take on that extra project at work because I want to take a painting class. These small boundaries are the bricks you use to rebuild the house of your identity.
And physically, it's about reclaiming your time. I tell my patients to treat their exercise or their doctor's appointments like a non-negotiable prescription. If I prescribed you a life-saving medication, you wouldn't skip it because your husband couldn't find his socks, right? Self-care is that medication. We also need to talk about the myth of the fading woman. There's this idea that after 50, our vitality and our libido just evaporate.
Oh, that's a big one. The asexual grandmother trope, it's so damaging.
It really is. While hormones change, desire doesn't have an expiration date. It just requires a different kind of tending. Sometimes the reason a woman loses her libido isn't just the drop in testosterone or estrogen. It's the sheer exhaustion of being everyone's emotional dumping ground. It's hard to feel sexy or vibrant when you feel like a utility bill. When you start re-encountering yourself, your energy changes, and often your intimacy with yourself and your partner can actually become deeper and more authentic because it's finally based on your pleasure too.
That's the key, authenticity. For so many years, we perform the roles expected of us. This stage of life, this evolving, is about dropping the performance. It's about looking in the mirror and saying, I see the gray hair, I see the lines, I see the changes, and I also see a woman who has survived 100% of her hardest days. What does she want for the next 30 years? I love that. What does she want? It's a question many women haven't asked themselves in decades. And the answer doesn't have to be a grand cinematic transformation. It can be as simple as the joy of a morning walk alone, the decision to finally see a specialist about your menopause symptoms, or the courage to start a journal. As we start to wrap up this conversation, I want to remind everyone listening that this re-encounter isn't a destination. You don't just arrive at being found. It's a daily practice of choosing yourself. It's the practice of listening to your body when it says, I'm tired, and listening to your soul when it says, I'm bored.
And remember, the changes you are feeling, the physical shifts, the emotional restlessness, they aren't signs that you are failing at aging. They are signals that you are ready for your next iteration.
You've given so much to the world. It is finally time to give back to the woman who made all that giving possible. You are the foundation of your life, and it's time to reinforce that foundation with love, health, and a lot of grace. If this episode touched something inside you, if you felt that ping of recognition, please know you aren't alone. There is a whole community of us, She's Evolving, walking this same path. We'd love for you to share this episode with a friend, perhaps that one friend who always puts everyone else first. Let this be her permission slip to start her own journey back to herself. Thank you for being with us today. Take a deep breath, maybe put your hand on your heart, and acknowledge the incredible woman you are. Your body is changing, your life is shifting, but your story is far from over. In fact, the most interesting chapters might just be starting now. We'll be back next week with more honest conversations. Until then, keep evolving, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep showing up for yourself. You are worth the effort. Goodbye for now, and take care of that beautiful soul of yours. See you in the next episode.